So we're at the Semach Tzedek Baal Shem Tov beginner Kollel, and today we're going to discuss the what's going to happen when Moshiach comes. So it's a very big question. There are a lot of midrashim. There are a lot of if you want to call it different divinely inspired prophecies. Certainly, there are a lot of prophecies. In fact, the Rambam goes so far as to say as like we have no idea what's going to happen. It's all like I mean, he gives a basic outline, which this is what the Rebbe says is the basic halacha, meaning for sure this is going to happen. Which is what he says in Yamait Melech Beis David, that a king from the house of David will get up. Hoiga b'Torah, who's very, very knowledgeable in Torah. I forget the exact line, but he does the mitzvahs like David, his father. V'chazik bidka, he strengthens Judaism around the world. So somebody very much like the Rebbe, or like Rabbi Evan Yisrael said, that the person who really fit the description of Mashiach was the Rebbe, the person that also it says Yilchai Milchemes Hashem V'Yinatzeach. This is very, very important. He fights the wars of God and he wins. So, what does that mean? It means, the Rebbe says there are three kinds of wars. There's one war where you basically, God forbid, annihilate the enemy. It's not a great thing to have to do. There's another kind of war, which this war, you basically, this is kind of the American way, you're so strong that the enemy is afraid to attack. And then there's a third kind of war, and in this war, what happens is you turn your enemy into a friend. And so this week we discussed this in great detail yesterday. We're not going to go into more detail now, but basically, Parshas Mishpatim, the last sikha, the last talk of the Rebbe on Parshas Mishpatim, was literally the Friday before there was the historic resolution of cessation of war, that Russia and America got together. They ended officially the Cold War, no more war. And this was a direct result of literally 70 years of the Rebbe's working and trying to get the communists. Many people had an approach, when somebody was your enemy, so the normal approach is you go back and you attack them. But really the Rebbe was, no, that's not the right approach. We see this approach with the Rebbe completely. This was his approach. Now, it's not to say the Rebbe was naive. I mean, with certain people that are terrorists, that there's nobody to talk to, you have no one to talk to. But other people that are simply making an error in judgment, and most people today, certainly brought up in the West, want to be good. They want to do the right thing. It's just an error in judgment. So these people that you can't, if you're going to be antagonistic towards them, you're actually going to make them dig in their heels. You have to go the opposite way. You have to engage with them even while they're doing the wrong thing. There are many philosophies now that are absolutely insane and bizarre, but the people that are holding these philosophies are not bad people. They're not coming from a place of evil. They're coming from a place of naive, of being brainwashed. They're basically good people having been taught the bad philosophies. So that's really in a way what communism was. The Russians weren't inherently bad. The Russia was a situation where they followed this nutcase Karl Marx, who didn't work a day in his life and told everybody else to work. And so one of the interesting things about Karl Marx, if I could say I psychoanalyzed him, Karl Marx basically had the disease of jealousy. And so there's a big, great rabbi, his name was Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutz. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutz said, what's the difference between a lover of truth and a hater of falsehood? They seem very similar, but he says the difference is exactly they're polar opposites. The lover of truth doesn't rest until he finds the truth. Somebody that's looking for truth ends up finding truth. The hater of falsehood is somebody who's basically a little traumatized by falsehood, and therefore all he sees is falsehood, right? It's a person that's been bullied, all he sees is bullies. So also the person that's jealous of wealthy people, all he can see is what's wrong in wealthy people. You see this very much in the radical left. It's all about the negative of the wealth, but meanwhile all they want to do is basically steal it. So it doesn't work both ways. You can't, you want to live in a forest, go live in a forest, but you can't say somebody else is wrong for having wealth and give it to me, right? So these ideologies are really ideologies based on kind of jealousy. And in the end of the day, the problem is that people buy into these ideologies, and then they become, you have two kinds of people in a movement. You have the leaders that create it, and the followers that implement it, right? In a certain sense, the followers are more dangerous than the leaders, because the leaders is like the head of the snake, but without the feet, the snake can't go anywhere. And so it's very, very important that people are very clear about what is the path seeking truth, because ultimately the path seeking truth is a positive path. It's a path of goodness. It's a path of love. In fact, the same statement goes in another line, which is a very powerful line. It says, what is the difference between a lover of love and a hater of hate? Again, they seem very similar, but they're diametrically opposed, because the lover of love ends up finding love, because that's what he's looking for, what she's looking for. But the hater of hate ends up dealing with hate. This person is a hater and that person is a hater. So it's very important for a person. We see certainly the media since the time of Obama, which he was very negative, went into this very negative, a mean state, pointing out everybody's faults, like things that never would have happened before in America. The way they're speaking is very, very wrong. Of course, according to the Torah, the way we speak is very, very important. The dignity of another person is sacrosanct. That is a very, very sacred thing. And therefore, a person has to be exceptionally careful with the words that they use, because the words that we say impact, they say sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But it's actually the other way around. Words will hurt my soul, because the words that we use impact, and that's the reason we use those words, whether positive or negative, because basically we're trying to have an effect. And a person that's being negative doesn't know that they're being negative. They don't realize that they're being motivated. Let's say, Hitler and anti-Israel, all these things, the motivation is all very much a jealousy. As Einstein said, it can't be that the Germans were against the Jews. The Jews come from a race, because the Jews come from all races. We're here in Israel. There's every single color of Jew. Jews are basically a religion, and the basis of the religion is goodness and kindness. So it develops positive people. As such, what ends up happening is that people that have been abused and are negative and are whatever, emotionally wrecks, so they become jealous of the positive. And so this is a tangent, but an important tangent. So getting on with the subject, the idea of Moshiach on a very basic level, according to the Rambam, we said is that he fights the wars of God and he succeeds. So the Rebbe actually did that. We said about this yesterday. The Rebbe engaged with Russia, and to a certain extent, I mean, the current, certainly the administration, the Biden administration, was very foolish in their way of dealing with Russia, and therefore this catastrophe happened. Had it been Trump, people that would have dealt with them in a different way, things would have been different. But the Rebbe's approach was to tell the Russians, listen, there's a different way. And really, over 70 years, the Russians finally got the message. Let's get away from communism. It's just a draconian stupidity, not to mention evil. And so the Rebbe, from this time, a new era entered into the world, an era of peacefulness, which really has occurred since then. There are no major world wars, God forbid, stuff like that. So the world is in a much, much, much better and safer place than it ever was in human history. And the technology is expanding, and the internet creates, even though it's problems, it also creates a sense of brotherhood. Not to mention maybe Corona did as well. We're all pretty equal. Now, this person that has these qualities on a very basic level is called Cheskas Mashiach. Okay, we can trust that such a person, and there are very few people in history, the Rebbe being one of them. This person has a qualification. He has the qualities of Mashiach, but we don't know did Mashiach come or not. When do we know for sure Mashiach comes? So there are two major events that happens. One is the building of the Beis HaMikdash, and the second is the ingathering of the Jews. So unfortunately, those two events have not happened. When we see the Beis HaMikdash and when all the Jews have returned to Israel, then we know that whoever does that, we know that person is definitely Mashiach. Now, all of that is the simplest level. That could even happen in a very natural way. Somebody right now somehow could have this power to build the Beis HaMikdash, to bring all the Jews back. You'd obviously have to have the first qualifications as well. But technically, this could happen in a natural way. It doesn't have to happen in a supernatural way. But that's not what's going to happen. What's really going to happen is a supernatural event of epic proportions, as it says, Ki meit seischem eretz Mitzrayim arein nefles. As you left Egypt, so will I show you wonders. So it means, as we know from Chassidus, that the miracles that occurred when we left Egypt will be like nothing, will be like natural compared to the miracles that will come when Mashiach comes. And the following are the things that are going to happen when Mashiach comes. They're all going to pretty much happen at the same time. And it will, just like the Jews left Egypt, miracles upon miracles. It says a maidservant saw at the sea more than Yecheskel ben Buzi. Incredible, incredible miracles. We're going to enter into a period of such miracles. And remember, they're going to be videotaped. They're going to be the news of the world. It's not going to be something like, oh, wow, that was history. It will forever be imprinted. These are the miracles. There will be new festivals, just like we have the festival celebrating going out of Egypt. We celebrate Pesach and Sukkot and Shavuos. We will be celebrating new festivals. In fact, it says that we won't have any festivals except for Purim and Yom Kippur. Now, it doesn't mean that, God forbid, that we won't have Pesach. But relative to the amazing miracles of Mashiach, the Hasidic rabbis say, my father told me this, my father's a great scholar, thank God, that the day of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz will be the first day of Yom Tif of Mashiach, and the 3 weeks will be Chol HaMoed, and Tisha B'Av will be the final day. That will be the final Yom Tif. So we're going to have these great festivals, a 3-week festival celebrating the coming of the Mashiach. It's going to be epic. Now, this is what's going to happen. And again, how do we know this? We know this because the Rebbe knew everything. The Rebbe knew all that came before him, and he told us. So when you look at what the Rebbe said, and I had the schus of translating a book called the Rebbe Mashiach, we learn it every day. So when you look at the actual text of what the Rebbe said, then we know for sure exactly what's going to happen. So we know the following is going to happen. First of all, there will be the resurrection of the dead. The resurrection of the dead is no small feat. In fact, there was a lady that we know, Tanya, that she recently had a dream that she was two people. In fact, they had a very similar dream simultaneously. I know another person that had a similar dream that she went to the grave of her father, and her father came into the grave, and her father said, "Come, let's go get our friends." And they went, opened up graves. And this is very interesting because I think her friend had a camera there. I don't remember the exact details. Her friend simultaneously had a similar dream, and what happened was the father said something like, "Just take a picture," and her camera started working like miraculously. So this is a real dream. I have another friend who, about a month ago, I have another friend who had a dream once that I think maybe it was he that was in a grave, and he woke up and he came out of a grave, and then he saw all the graves around him opening up, and then people coming out, and then he had a girlfriend in Israel, and she was by a tree in a cemetery. He says, "Where are you?" She says, "I'm in the Mount of Olives." He says, "That's exactly where I saw my dream." Now, this is a guy that never came to Israel. So this is an amazing thing. Literally, the dead will rise. We know there's a very famous story that there was an emperor. One of the books, when any of you guys are rich, I'd love somebody to sponsor this book, called The Emperors and the Rabbis, because they're fascinating dialogues between these emperors who, in a sense, had a very interesting and maybe high level of consciousness because they were emperors, and their questions to the rabbis. So one of the questions of one of the emperors to the rabbis was that how's God going to resurrect the dead? So they said that in the back of the neck there is a bone, and this bone is called the luz bone. Now, this luz bone is indestructible. In fact, I heard this from a Holocaust survivor that during the terrible time of Auschwitz, that those people that were working in the crematorium, they said that there was always a little bone, right? So this luz bone, in fact, I was at Auschwitz. I saw the little river. It wasn't a river; it's a pond where they dumped the ashes. Terrible to see a gray pond. I think there are 2 million Jewish bodies, So in any event, this river, this little bone is called the luz bone. And what they did is they took a hammer and they tried to smash it. And then they didn't smash. I think they tried to burn it in a fire, and nothing could get rid of this bone. And so what happened was the rabbi said, "What's Hashem going to do? He's going to take this bone and he's going to turn it into a dough. And then from this dough, he's going to resurrect the person." Now we know today with DNA that just one cell, which is in a bone, is enough to have the body of a person. And so what this means is that it literally is the source for where you can resurrect the body. If you just turn it into like a new a substance that you can put the person, you have the information to put the person in. So now that's one thing that's going to happen. So immediately when Mashiach comes, now there are some opinions that only 40 years after Mashiach is going to come will there be resurrection of the dead. But it looks like that it's actually going to be immediately. So right away, everybody will get up. So immediately you're going to have a situation that will change the face of humanity forever. We're not just talking about Jewish resurrection. We're talking about, so amongst the Jews that have died, must be at least, 100 million people. Now we know also that there was tribes that they were sent, the 10 tribes were sent, and they're behind the Sambachan River. This is a very special river. And this river basically shoots up rocks during the week, and on Shabbos it quiets down. And so there are 10 tribes. Now imagine 10 tribes that were there for 2,500 years. They must be 100 million people at least as well. So you have another 100 million Jews coming back. Then you have the good Gentiles. I don't know, let's call that another 100 million people. So immediately the world gets 300 million people. Yes. There's a resurrection for the good Gentiles, correct. The fact that it's what it says, that a nar b'meya, that a young person that's 100 years old passes away. So this refers not to the Jewish people, because the Jewish people are going to live forever, but this refers to, I guess, I don't know, I think some of the Goyim will live forever as well, but maybe refers to some of them that will pass away. Somebody that's young passing away would be 100, maybe somebody old 1,000. So there is going to be, yes, correct. Yeah.
Where do you learn this from?
What? I don't remember. I think it was based on a mimer. Yeah. You can look it up. I'm stand to be corrected, but I believe that I'm correct. Yeah. If you remind me, I'll ask somebody to what their opinion is of that. That's correct. So we're talking about a resurrection of 300 million people. Then we know, of course, the Rebbe says that the Beis HaMikdash is first going to come to 770. And so, because of the final place where the Rebbe of the generation is, that's where the Shechina went. And so, the Beis HaMikdash is going to come to 770. And not only that, the resurrection, the Mashiach is first going to start there. The Rebbe says that the previous Rebbe basically requested of Hashem that that's where Mashiach should begin. And so that's where Mashiach is going to begin. 770 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York. And from there, the clouds are going to come. And we know it says that the Rebbe says the first thing Mashiach is going to do is make a farbrengen, right? It's very well known, a great feast. It's going to be a live televised event. The whole world's going to see what's happening. And then we're going to take these clouds, we're going to take the Jewish people from everywhere in the world. And it's going to somehow, everybody will come to Israel. It says there will be nobody that won't have, like if you're not comfortable with your accommodations now, everybody will have like a ranch, and on your ranch everybody will have a mountain and a valley. You're going to have just like Israel has everything in a microcosm, every single person will have a holding and they'll have everything. We can't even imagine what's going to happen. We know that the Gentiles, of course, will now understand without a shadow of a doubt that the Jews are right. There's a famous thing from the comedian Shem, he had bipolar and he committed suicide. What's his name? Robin Williams. And so Robin Williams, he has this joke that like different people get to heaven. What happens to them? So the Muslims get to heaven, and the founding fathers of America start to beat them. They say, what happened? He says, oh, there was a typo. It's not virgins, it's Virginians. And then when the Christians get to heaven, he says, sorry, you got to go to the other side. They say, what happened? We believe. He says, sorry, the Jews are right. So it's like all these, he's a funny guy. In any event, so the story is, not to put anyone down, but the story is that the whole world will suddenly see, no, the Jew, meaning God is right. There's one God, the God of Israel, and the Holy Temple, of course, be in Jerusalem, and it will be a house of prayer. It says the Holy Temple will be like 3 kilometers or miles in the sky. I think there'll be cloud transportation to get to it. So it's like we're going to be living, there'll be a supernatural reality that becomes natural. So we're going to have a new type of existence. Just like today, if you took somebody from 100 years ago, you put them in the world today, they would think that there are things, there's a new supernatural reality. You have planes, you have phones, there's supernatural realities. And they say with a miracle, the first time you see it, it's a miracle. The second time, it's natural. So it's a supernatural reality. But this supernatural reality becomes a natural, normal event, and therefore the whole world will just live. And this is the main thing of Mashiach. It's very, very important to understand this. Very few people, I think, really know this, and that is there was a Rebbe, a Polish Rebbe, that once said that those who know what Mashiach is don't say, those that say don't know, and the only ones that know and say are the Chabad Rebbe's. So what is Mashiach in essence? What is the essence of Mashiach? And that's very important. Okay, let's say I have a beautiful ranch. Thank you very much, Hashem. I love you. I have I have a beautiful, meaningful purpose in life. I have a Beis Hamikdash to go to, but technically, let's say I was a wealthy guy in the olden days and had a beautiful ranch and I had a Beis Hamikdash to go to, and I have a nice, meaningful life. Is that Mashiach? What is Mashiach ultimately? So Mashiach ultimately is not something that happens outside of you; it's something that happens inside of you, and that is so the revelation and the connection of Hashem with you. The Rebbe says, greater than all the revelations. Now, we can't imagine. We're talking about revelations that we don't imagine. Mashiach is going to teach in a visual way. We can't imagine what's coming. I think that the only reason, in fact, the Rebbe said something similar to this, the only reason God could get away with the horrific evil that he did to us through exile is because Mashiach will be so great. It's like, Baal Shem Tov gives an example. The example is of a little prince that's playing with his matchsticks. And he builds a beautiful little castle. Beautiful. He works days and days. And this minister comes by, and with arrogance, he just kicks it, and the kid is crying, and he goes to his father, the king, and he tells him what happened. Please punish the minister, and the father laughs. So why is the father laughing? The poor kid. He built it for days. He worked so hard. The father's laughing because in his mind, he's going to build him a real palace with the real servants and real Shem. It's going to be so beautiful. He already has in mind what's coming. So Hashem, who knows the future, the incredible gifts that he's going to give us, can handle the suffering that we have to go through and the growth that we have to go through, because he knows. A modern day example, let's say the guy's a CEO of a company, and he puts his kid, he says, you start in sweeping the floors. And it's a big company, and the kid comes home, and every day he's crying, Dad, I don't want to sweep the floors. He says, no, you sweep the floors. He says, Dad, what are you doing to me? Slowly but surely he raises, because in the father's mind, one day he's going to be the CEO of this company, so he doesn't mind all the growth that he has to go to get to where he has to go to. And what's the ultimate growth that happens to us? It's not what happens outside of us. I sometimes think about this, it's very, what is a blessing? And two kinds of blessings. The Rebbe says we should have everything good physically and spiritually, and both together. But ultimately, the real blessing is not the physical blessing, okay? Because how much food can a person eat? How much money does a person need? Once you're comfortable, you're comfortable. You don't need more. In fact, more than comfort in the physical world can be a distraction. It's actually bad. Not to say you shouldn't have more money to give money, but for a person's own self, more is less. You need the basics. You need to be comfortable. Now, but spiritually, your inner world has an infinite amount that it can expand. So your expansion physically, a certain amount is a tragedy. If you would you like to join? You got another program? Okay. Great. So physically, to expand physically is there's a certain amount that contracted is not good, right? Everyone needs a certain amount of physical, like Maslow's hierarchy. You need a certain amount of physical stuff. Even emotional stuff, you need to have a positive self-image. People don't know part of Maslow's hierarchy was a positive self-image. It's very, very important. We have to know that we're good. If anybody offended us, it was just jealousy of our self-esteem, so we can't take it personal. So we have to have a positive basic baseline. But more than that, if my self-esteem is too great, that becomes a liability, right? And if I have my house is too big, or my bank account is too big, and I don't know what to do with it, it becomes a liability. So the point is that in the physical realm, where I have too much food, right? In the physical realm, everything has a certain amount that you need. You don't need too little, you don't need too much, but it's a very minimal, whatever, I shouldn't say minimal, there's a specific amount. We're just little people. How much do we need already? But hello, sir. But in the spiritual realm, we have infinity. We can always grow more. There's always another level that we can reach. We can always expand more. So the ultimate gift of life is the gift of being able to learn more, to grow more, to give more. And so in the times of Mashiach, now a human being by himself can never ever infinitely expand because we don't have the capacity of infinity in us. So that's where God comes into the picture. And this is the whole purpose of this world. The purpose of the world is for many thousands of years people tried to get comfortable, which thank God to a certain extent we live. I remember one of my teachers telling me we live better than kings and queens did in the olden days. They couldn't press a button and have the heat and the cold and nuke something and have hot food and this and that. We live in many respects better than kings and queens did, and they were very wealthy. But the spiritual realm, I'm just trying to remember, what did I say right before that? I was saying, yeah, right before I said kings and queens, there was a point that I was saying.
Yeah, like a house too big, too much money,
Right,
become distraction.
right. So basically, spiritually, this was the point. Spiritually, you see, the whole purpose of this world. Ari, you still with me? Okay, good stuff. Enjoying? Good, good. A holy soul appreciates holiness. Good stuff. So the whole purpose of this world, you can't say it's a physical thing. What God needs, a physical thing. So for thousands of years, people worked very hard for there to be, I don't know, the basic comforts that we have. But now that you have those comforts, they could never imagine that people wouldn't be happy with them. Half the world is trying to get into the Western countries to get a job. And half the Western countries don't want jobs. So, in other words, what's going on is that once you have these comforts, it becomes meaningless to you because you take for granted the fact that you have a bed to sleep in. I remember this kid, Shem is a very nice black kid. They come from poor circumstances in South Africa. He was working for a friend of mine. And he said, okay, he made peace with the rats. There were rats in whatever hovel he was living in. He made peace with them. And he was a great person, nice person, but the point of the matter is that was his circumstances, and he made peace with it. Sure, he wants better circumstances, but he made peace with it. The point is that the physical realm, once you get there, is very easy. In fact, it's almost impossible not to take it for granted. It doesn't mean much. That's why you have to thank Hashem every morning for the blessings you have. Without thanking Hashem, big thing that would make our Western world better is thanking Hashem. Everybody has to wake up in the morning and thank Hashem. If we have gratitude in the morning, we're definitely going to have a much better life. And also at night, the Rebbe says an interesting thing. Every night you should thank Hashem for the blessings that came to you that day. So I think every morning you have to thank Hashem for your general blessings. Every evening you should thank Hashem for the specific blessings that came to you that day. In fact, during Ma'ariv, in the Ma'ariv evening service, we are meant to think about what's called the cheshbon nefesh. Think about your day. It's also very important because a person can go through life and not actually kind of change because they never think about themselves. They never think, who am I? What am I doing? Should I be like this? Should I not be like this? So that's why during Ma'ariv we're meant to think about our day. We're meant to actually contemplate, how is my day? Am I happy? And not to feel guilty about it, but just to say, tomorrow I'm going to change. I'm going to have a better day. You have a beautiful custom, and you wake up in the morning and you say that today is going to be a miraculous day. And that makes a big effect on the day. Even from quantum physics, they speak about this, having that kind of intention. Today will be a miraculous day, can actually make these things happen. It's very powerful to do this stuff. In any event, to summarize, the greatest reason of this world is not for a physical thing. Okay, Hashem, look, Hashem owns the whole universe. Hashem needs, like a person. Well, how much can a person have? Let's say the biggest house in the world. Let's say you have 3,000 rooms. But it's nothing compared to, I don't know, even in one city or a country. It's like, it's nothing. So what does this world really offer us? It offers us the opportunity for infinite growth. Now, growth is an interesting thing. Why? Because in order to grow, you have to change. In order to change, you have to leave where you are to get to where you're going to go to. So the process of growth, I forgot who speaks about it. I think that Baal Shem speaks it's a little, or maybe Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Bar Dishev. It's like going upstairs. Whenever you go upstairs, there's a moment that your foot has to leave one place. Then it's in no man's land. It's just hovering, and then it lands in the next place. So growth is this kind of process where we're able to let go in a way of who we are. And it's scary in a way, because who am I, right? And that's the first thing that Hashem told Avraham Avinu, is I want you to let go of your identity, of your past. Everybody today is trying to figure out their identity. Your identity is that you can grow forever. You can always let go of your identity, and you can have a new identity. And because the new identity becomes, let's say, somebody that's, somebody that's not so smart. He says, okay, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to become a doctor. Let's say somebody that's an infinite genius. He says, okay, today I'll be a lawyer. Tomorrow I'll be a doctor. He can learn it all. So it's like a different type of paradigm. And so the greatest thing that can happen to a human being is to enter into the infinite growth paradigm, which is, who am I for real? I'm really Hashem. My neshama is Hashem. And what can Hashem do? Hashem is capable of anything, which means I am capable of anything. And what does that mean practically? It means that today I could be a whole new person. I can let go of all the, if you want to call it big shot, or all the great things that I assume about myself from yesterday. And they could truly be wonderful and big. But still, you're infinite. And relative to infinity, what you did was great relative to yesterday. But today, you could be infinitely greater than even yesterday. And tomorrow, you could be infinitely greater. So every single moment, that's what it says about Avraham Avinu. It was haloich v'nosaya hanegba. He was constantly moving forward. And really, the way to get there is to have what Hashem said to Avraham Avinu. He says, lech lecha, go to yourself. So he was saying, I will show. Now, Avraham Avinu was no idiot. Avraham Avinu discovered Hashem from his mind. He was one of the greatest geniuses that ever lived. But even he didn't understand his potential. Because a human being doesn't have the capacity to understand infinity, to understand that they have an infinite potential. I have a friend, he's very smart, Yossi Malinsky, and he basically said, imagine you're on a spaceship. And I'm going to tell you, your spaceship can drive for infinity. Can you imagine actually driving for infinity? You almost have to believe that there's an end. Somewhere at the end, there's an end. We can't even imagine driving infinitely. We just can't imagine infinity. And we're saying that, no. You are going to live for infinity. You're going to always grow infinitely. It's a very powerful concept. And even Avraham Avinu couldn't imagine this. And therefore Hashem told Avraham Avinu, I want you to abandon all your concepts of yourself. Everything that you think that a human being is, let go. You don't know what a human being is. I'm going to tell you. If you go to the place that I tell you, then every single step is going to be your next self, your next self, your next self, your next self. And this way we enter into the, and many times when you look at what the Rebbe says at the end of the Sichos of Mem Chesed and Beis, in a way I call it the highest Sichos, the most amazing Sichos, the Rebbe ends, that we will go from level to level and we will see Hashem in Tziyot. In other words, we are always going to, the ultimate of Moshiach is not that you have your fancy house, and not that there is a resurrection of the dead, and even not that there's a Beis HaMikdash. All those things, in a certain sense, might have possibly been before. But rather is that you have this concept that you are able to infinitely grow, and everybody's infinitely growing. So now you have a world in which, like a beautiful forest, like it says, Ki Adam Eitz Hasodam, man is like a tree of the field, we all are growing. And I don't know if you know this, anybody ever heard of mycelium? Mycelium is very interesting. There's a lady that discovered this. So trees talk to each other. They create a network, a kind of tunnels. They're based on some kind of bacteria. And they create tunnels that can be kilometers long. And they literally communicate with each other. and let's say one tree gets a bug or a virus, they'll send a chemical message to the other tree that there's a virus, start producing antibodies. And there's also something called a mother tree. And if, God forbid, lightning hits the mother tree, she holds the most wisdom. Let's say she's 400 years old. In 1 second, she imparts all her wisdom to the other trees. Not only that, the mother tree, there was a theory, and they discovered the theory is true, that what will happen is that the mother tree will actually reduce some of her roots for her own seeds. So the tree is aware of its own seed, and it's pulling back some of its roots so its child can have space. So every person in the times of Moshiach will have this kind of ability to um, be a source of Torah for one another. So we will all reach the level of not only being the receiver of Torah, but actually a giver, a contributor to Torah. We will all be great prophets. We will all literally become one with Hashem and be this beautiful world of Torah. And that's what the Rambam says, that, the verse says, nobody will teach one another, for everybody will know me. And it says that we will literally continuously be learning more a world, the whole occupation of the world is Elo Ladas as Hashem, to know Hashem. And this is an amazing world, and we're getting there. Technologically, we're getting very soon to a point that nobody's actually going to have to work. So what are we going to do? We're going to continuously develop spiritually. Meheirav Yameinu Mamish.